Okay, there we go. Okay, and we are now recording the session. So our study roadmap, we are still on miscellaneous concepts. Seems like we've been there a long time, but all those miscellaneous concepts make up a good chunk of the exam. But starting on Wednesday, we're going to jump through the next 3 bullets pretty quick, and then we're going to spend some time on SSO and OAuth and communities, and then whatever else we figure out has been left over. So don't worry, we won't be stuck in miscellaneous concepts forever. We will get off of that. Today's presenters, we have Pavithra talking, going to give us a review of session security, and then Clara, and I see you're on already, will give us concepts of AAA, Authentication, Authorization, and Accounting, and hopefully Satish will be joining us and can do a review of, or give us examples of various authentication, authorization, and accounting. And we will get going. I'm still admitting a couple of latecomers here. So Pavithra, just before we jump into that, just a reminder of the schedule and resource links that are available. Please use those, the resources guide especially. I see some folks have been adding links on the additional study resources page, and that's fantastic. If you're including links at the end of your slide presentations, please also remember to put them on the sheet. It makes it a lot easier for people to find them later. Okay, and I think with that, Pavithra, I will hand it, sorry, I'm going to jump the slides back where they need to go. And Pavithra, I am going to hand it over to you. So I will stop presenting and hand it over.
Thank you, Natalya. Good morning, everybody. I do have some sort of, hopefully, like I won't sound as bad. Okay, let me go ahead and share my screen. All right, let's start. Okay, let me go ahead and put in a new view presentation mode. Can you all see the screen?
I'm not seeing it on the big screen. I see it like where, oh, let me see, maybe I do. Okay, I see it now.
Yeah, I'm seeing it.
Okay, so let's start. So do I need to call out everybody's name, or like we'll go?
If you want to go around, yeah, by all means, feel free to pick on them. That way I don't have to be the one.
No, you can pick people. Okay. Probably you can pick the people so I can ask questions.
Okay, sure.
Sure.
Okay. So Swadka, we're going to call on you first for this one.
So our first question is, suppose like we have set a session timeout as 2 hours, and then the user updates the record after 30 minutes. And at this point of time, when will the user be logged out? Like after how many more minutes the user will be logged out?
I'm going to go with A.
Okay. Is there any other answers?
I'm going to go with E, as in I don't see the answer. I don't think the right answer is up on the list.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's there either.
Yeah, I don't think it'd be 90 minutes, because if they update a record after 30 minutes, then what happens is their session gets reset, and then the counter starts again. So the 2-hour counter starts from the last time they interacted with the web application.
No, the way it would work is when we have the session timeout set as 2 hours, if they update the record after 30 minutes, so the counter would have started at the beginning of the 1 hour, and it will not get updated until half of the activity, half of the session timeout hour. So that's why, like, even though they updated at after 30 minutes, it still counts from the before 30 minutes. So that's why the answer is 90 minutes.
So if I'm working throughout the day, let's say, like I log on and I start working every 5 minutes or so, I update a record, it's still going to kick me out for 2 hours?
No. So the way it would work is like, let's take example of 30 minutes. So if 30 minutes is the timeout, until 15 minutes, it will not update the current activity time. So if you are doing anything before 15 minutes, then it still keep the counter as 30 minutes. So you, if at 1 o'clock, 1:10 you did something, so the counter will be like, you will be at if the counter starts at 1 and at 1:10 you updated something, so 1:30 you will be logged out. But if you do something at 1:20, then the counter starts again at 1:20, so it will be 30 more minutes from there. So it's the till the half time of the timeout, it will not get updated.
Huh. Interesting. Okay, so the thing you did 30 minutes ago, because the timer hasn't checked to see if you're active, it's like it doesn't count.
Right. So after 1 hour, if you are going to start, if you update something, that is when the counter again starts.
So if I log in and I don't do anything for 59 minutes and I do something at the 59-minute mark, the counter hasn't started yet, so it thinks I'm still idle. And so it'll give me an hour. But if I do something at the 1 hour, 1 minute mark, the counter has already started counting down to 60 minutes, but then it resets because it's within like that counting window.
Right. Yeah.
Wow, that's confusing.
Yeah. Okay. So the next question.
All right, and we're gonna call on John Daniel for this one. What do you think, John?
I'm thinking, is it practice table, select both disable session timeout without. Of course, I mean, I would say false because you want to give somebody a warning before you force them to log out. But I'm say false.
That's correct. So as a best practice, we should not have both disable session timeout warning pop up and also force logout on session timeout. Then the whole settings may not work as expected. Okay, the next question.
And this one's going to be for Edith.
So if we are using OAuth access token to perform a Salesforce REST API call, and you might get an invalid session ID, and if the token is obtained in the same transaction, so you might have to check some of the security settings what we have updated to make sure it is correct. So this is one of the scenario. There could be a lot of other scenarios where invalid session ID would occur, but if this could be one of the issues when we have wrong session security session setting is updated.
Wow, this looks like the kind of thing you'd see on an exam.
Anyway, let's see.
What do you think, Edith?
I
And
would
feel free to
say,
pick
I don't know. I would say either B or C, maybe B.
So the right answer is A and C. So we have to make sure that whenever this kind of situation occurs, the log session to IP address from which they originated should be off, because when a third party would be calling the Salesforce REST API, maybe the IP address originated may not always be the same. And also at the same time, like, we have to make sure that connected apps IP relaxation policy should be set to relax IP restrictions. That way, so we will not get this invalid session ID. And if we really want to make sure that the IP address restriction should be there, then we can actually we can use the option D, where we can turn on enforce login IP ranges on every request. D, where enforce login IP range on every request, and make sure that we provide the IP ranges for the connected app, so that we know only the requests from the particular IP ranges can access Salesforce.
Very good. All right, Terry Miller, you're next.
Basically, choose the feature which associates a current UI session for a user, such as community user, with a specific domain to help prevent unauthorized use of the session ID in another domain.
Sorry, still reading through it here. Is it just one answer that's correct?
Yeah, that's one answer which is correct.
Feature associates the current UI session for a user. Feature associates a current UI session for a user with a specific domain. I'm going to go with A.
The correct answer is C.
That was my second choice, but okay. I wasn't sure that was an option, so I knew A was an option, so I went with A. Okay.
Yeah, so when we have, like, most of the time when we have community, we might have different domains associated with community. So if we do not want a community user to start a session from one domain and then go to another domain, get a session ID and go to access another domain's data, then we can use this session setting to lock it.
So what would be some use cases? I'm going to throw this out to the group. What would be some use cases where I wouldn't want them jumping communities? Like if they have access to 3 communities, why would I require them to log out before they log into the next one? Can anybody think of a case where we'd want to do that? I can't, so. Nobody else can either.
I suppose if you're running different communities for different customers, so if you were sort of hosting communities, if your business was hosting communities, and so each of your customers, they would have a community and it would have a set of users, but you're basically doing like a multi-tenant community service offering. Maybe,
right.
And then you'd be isolating one community's efforts from another, and then they'd all be interacting with whatever service you're providing, but they should have no interaction with the other communities. Maybe that's the scenario. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know of a reason why you would do this, but there must be some reason they put the setting in Salesforce. So if anybody stumbles across a good use case, please share it with the group.
Yes, like the use case where, like, if you have multiple domains and different users could belong to, probably like you have a community where you have community for customers and then community for resellers who can access some of the customer cases, and then you can have a community for actual for actual partners, and then you kind of have access to all these 3 different communities, and then the data can be different. If the same user can be using this community, but the data what they see could be completely different.
Okay. All right, Amit. Is there another slide, Pavithra? If there is, Amit, you are on deck to answer next. Oh, it's a nice long one.
Since there are a lot of things, so I thought like probably like we can match the setting to the description.
Oh, that's a good one.
So require HTTP only attribute. What description can be matched to this?
Let's see.
I'm not able to see the question. Can you share the screen again, Pavithra?
Okay. I'm sharing the screen, so you are not able to see the questions.
No, can you repeat the question? I'm not able to see the question. I was able to see it before this.
Okay.
That's weird.
Yeah, so the question is require HTTP only attributes. So you have to match this with any of the descriptions. So the descriptions could be enable secure data caching in browser to improve page reload performance by avoiding extra round trips to the server, or like you want to load a lightning experience from a compromised content delivery network, or a session cookie is not accessible via calls from JavaScript. Or it could be like if you disable this setting, the remember me option doesn't appear on your aux login page or from switcher. Option E sets the auth to send session information using a post request instead of get request for cross-domain exchanges.
Wow.
So yeah, Amit, this one is different from the other ones. There's no red box on the left, so maybe that's the confusion. The whole slide is all white. Are you seeing the slide, or are you just not even seeing the slide?
I'm not even able to see the slide.
Okay, Pavithra, can you unshare and then just reshare? It might just be caching.
Yeah.
I had that happen to me the other day, and I had to disconnect and reconnect, and then I could see it again.
Okay.
Technology's awesome.
I would probably go with option E, in which still not able to see the slides. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, now I'm able to. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Oh my God. Okay, I have to match it. Okay. Okay, I didn't know that. Okay.
Well, while Amit is thinking through that one, we're gonna put. Let's see, David, you're gonna match B. Jeff, you're gonna match C. And I will think about who gets the rest. Satish, you're going to match D. And I mean D on the left side. So the things I'm assigning are on the left side.
Yeah, I'll go first.
I can match A.
Yeah.
Okay. Who said they can match A?
John can match A because by the time A, B, C, and D are already done, I'll be pretty easy to figure it out.
Okay, let me go ahead and show the answer. When we have require HTTP only attribute, then a session cookie is not accessible via calls from JavaScript. So it should always be a HTTP method. We cannot use any other method to access that cookie.
Oh, you're very good at writing tricky questions, Pavithra.
So can we answer B?
Yeah, David already put his answer in chat, but David, tell us what B is.
Okay, B is with E.
Yeah, that's what he said.
Good job. So C.
Jeff, what do you think?
Right. So if you, it's D. If you disable the if you disable the caching, then you won't have the remember me. So C is D.
That's correct.
Okay. And then Satish, what's the answer for D?
It's A.
Yes, that's correct. So if we have this checked, then there will be secure data caching and it improves the page load performance.
But makes admins very angry when they're trying to put changes in and they don't show up.
Yes.
And then content delivery network. Very good. All right, awesome. Let's move on. That's a great slide.
We have some more for identity verification. Should I stop here, or like I have few more slides?
I would say if you just for purposes of time, let's just have folks put their answers in the chat window.
Okay.
And then let's see, SM, or if you know any of these matches, if somebody wants to just what they think. Nobody's typing in the chat. We're all reading probably. All right, David says A goes to D.
A goes to E. So when we enable the SMS method of identity confirmation, this is enabled by default and we cannot disable it. If this method, if there is no mobile number associated with a user, then it automatically sends an email for identity confirmation. So as soon as admin or user associate a mobile number with a user, then this SMS method of identity confirmation will be updated.
All right, Clara says G to F.
Okay. Next one is B. So require security tokens for API login. This only is applicable for API versions 31 and earlier. C to B, where we have login IP ranges. This would applicable for this option would be applicable only in certain editions. This is not available in enterprise or professional editions. And then we have D, where let users use security key. So with this option, like you can use UTF security key for two-factor authentication. The next option is E, where require identity verification during two-factor authentication registration. So when we have this, the require user to confirm their identity through a two-factor authentication method. F is like require identity verification for change of email address. If this is set, then it requires user to log in again and confirm their identity before change to their email address. And G to F, where location-based automated verification with Salesforce Authenticator. If this is set, this allows user to verify identity by automatically approving notification in Salesforce Authenticator whenever users are in trusted locations such as home or office. Even you can specify the trusted IP ranges for this option. All right, so let me go for the next one. Anybody want to just take a answer where what do you mean by clickjacking and what are the default protection enabled in Salesforce for clickjacking?
Well, this sounds like a hijack of your button click. I'm not quite sure what it means. Maybe that you click on a link thinking you know where it goes, but it actually takes you somewhere else.
Yes, that's almost correct. Yeah. So it's like you trick someone to click on something by overlaying a transparent action on top of the other action. So they think they are clicking something, but they are actually clicking something else. So this usually happens if we have iframes. So by default, Salesforce provides protection for setup and non-setup pages, and we can always enable for Visualforce pages and other pages through security setting.
Nice.
The next question is, what is CSRF, cross-site request forgery? And what is by default, so sorry, this is like CSRF protection. Which pages are enabled for CSRF protection?
I would guess maybe the same pages that are enabled for clickjacking.
Yeah, actually, it provides a protection for non-setup pages for post and get. Yeah. So CSRF is more like where you're thinking that you're working on an authenticated site, and when you post something, it actually posts or get to a different site, not the one where your request should originate. So this protection is enabled by default for post and get request on non-setup pages.
Do you know what CSRF stands for?
It's cross-site request forgery.
Okay, thanks.
And the next question is, what is HSTS? And by default, platform enables HSTS for which pages?
Anybody have any ideas here? Jeff, we haven't heard much from you in a while. Oh, David just posted it. HTTP strict transport.
HTTP strict transport. Okay, so let's see if that helps.
Yes, that's correct. So when we have this HSTS enabled, so we will have HTTP strict transport security. So whenever, even if I go and type in HTTP something for my application, or if I use just www.mydomain, it always uses HTTPS, so it always redirects browsers to use HTTPS, and this is enabled for all Salesforce and Visualforce pages, and it cannot be disabled. We in the session security, we have an option to set this for communities and force.com sites only.
Okay.
And this there are other two. This will be this question is related to security levels. So we have two different kinds of security levels for login methods. What are those two security levels?
So I'll answer that since I didn't get the last one. It's standard and high assurance.
That's correct. And the last one is, what are the different types of policies or actions admin can specify for sensitive operations like reports and dashboards, manage auth provider, and manage encryption key, which require high assurance?
They can either block the user or ask the user to raise their sessions.
That's correct. Yeah. So it could be none or block or raise session to high assurance. And for reports and dashboards, we have one more where they will, if they have to take a printout, then they have to be in high assurance. That's all.
So
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, that was fantastic. Thank you, Pavithra. I have a question for the group on high assurance. I was playing around with this over the weekend, and I was logged in as a user in a non-high assurance session, and then I tried to do something that required high assurance, and it didn't raise my session. It actually, so what I did was I made reports high assurance. So what I noticed is when I wasn't logged in high assurance, I didn't even see the reports tab, and I didn't see any way to actually like raise it. I literally log out, come back in with a high assurance method. Was there some setting I'm missing? Does anybody know, or is that just?
Yeah, so I was also doing some studying on that topic, and the reason you experienced that is because you were probably logged in the Lightning experience. So in Lightning experience, if a resource uses high assurance and you are not logged in as high assurance, you don't even see the icons, you don't even see the report, you don't even see anything. You have to be logged from the very beginning in high assurance when using Lightning experience to actually see the reports or icons or whatever it is.
Oh, so in standard it would have worked, or classic, I guess they call it, or a low.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. That was just driving me crazy. And then I would try, like, just reloading the page, and it said you're not authorized to see this. So okay, so it's a Lightning thing.
Yeah.
Good old Lightning. I love it.
But that sounds like something you don't want, because obviously you want someone to have high assurance, but you want them to at least know it's there.
Yeah.
Because they don't know they need to log in as high assurance or even know what needs to happen, versus asking them for a second factor when they go to click something.
Yeah.
The joy of Lightning. And also another thing is that redirecting. So if you're logging in Lightning, right, and you want to raise the session and you use two-factor authentication, you need to redirect to have them type in the token or whatever it is. That is also not supported in Lightning.
Okay. All right. So I wonder when that's coming up on the Lightning roadmap.
Hopefully.
Yeah, that would be nice. Well, thank you, Clara. That solves the mystery because I was banging my head on that. I always have to remember if something's not working the way you expect, switch back to classic and try it there.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, Clara, you're actually up next for AAA concepts. So while you're talking, share your screen.
All right, cool. Okay, so my entire screen. And then let me know when you can see it.
It's coming slowly. All right. It's there.
Okay, so it's readable, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm supposed to be talking about AAA, right? Authentication, Authorization, and Accounting, but I actually wanted to take you through a trip. Recently, I did this trip. I was in Cancun and I came back to my home country, Dominican Republic, and I was so astonished to see how boarding an airplane is pretty much like authentication, authorization, and accounting. But the first thing that you have to do is identify yourself, right? So there is one initial step, let's call it step 0, in this whole journey, which is called identification. And identification is basically someone walks through the counter or someone goes to the login page and presents their credential. It could be password and username, or it could be their passport or the ticket or whatever it is. That's the first thing. Someone has to identify themselves. The next step is authentication. In the case of the airplane, there's someone behind the counter that takes my ticket plane and sometimes asks me for a second form of a second credential, like my ID or my password, just to make sure everything is real. And that's basically authentication. Authentication is the process of confirming or verifying those credentials are true and they are valid, so they have not expired. In our digital life, we usually don't see this process because it's handled in the background either by a SAML request or even by a SAML response. And that has to deal a lot with how the login flow is initiated, either if it's service provider initiated or identity provider initiated. And we will probably look more details on that. But the second step on this cool journey is authentication. And authentication basically means making sure that the credentials you provided are legit. Sometimes the system does the same authentication itself, or sometimes it relies the authentication to an identity provider. Cool. And then we have the third step, which is authorization, which in some times they get these two concepts, they get confused. But the process of authorization is determining what an authenticated user can access and what can he or she do in the system. And just notice how I highlighted the authenticated in red, because there cannot be authorizations without authentication. First, you have to make sure that whoever is trying to log in is real, whoever is trying to access your resources is valid, is okay to go, and then you authorize it. You give them the access they should have. And in the real life, this is like, okay, you just went to the counter, everything is good to go, and now you have to go through TSA, right? And they probably look at the ticket again, at your password, they scan your body or your suitcase and everything, and they go, okay, you are good to go, you have access to the restricted area. So that's the same. Authorization is just making sure what is the access you have. Ideally, if I was at the airport and I have passed through TSA, I was able to go in and shop, eat, hang out at my door or my gate, right? But I am not supposed to go into the backstages where only employees are supposed to be. I will get detained, arrested, and probably thrown to jail and tried. And I don't want that. So it's the same process. It's just making sure that an authenticated user has access to whatever resource he or she is trying to use. So again, in the digital life, we don't see this, but the system usually authorizes the user. The authorization point or step usually happens at the service provider. So let's say, for example, let's say, for example, that Salesforce is the service provider. Okay, so we click a button, a SAML is sent to Google, which is our identity provider. Google say, hey, yes, this is Clara. She's good to go. You can go ahead. She's authenticated. And then Salesforce, with that SAML response, is going to consume it and say, okay, now I know that you're Clara and you're good to go. But Clara, you also have a profile and permission sets assigned to you that are going to restrict what you can see and what you can do in the system. And finally, the last step, well, before the last step, we have the concept of identity. So if we merge the two, authentication and authorization, then we have everything we need to know the identity of a user. So the identity is pretty much the collection of all digital information that allows you or the system to know who a user is and what the user can access. And finally, the last step is accounting. And accounting is more for when things go wrong or just for auditing purposes. But accounting is referred to as all the resources that a system or an admin has to know what happened in their system. So in real life, again, going back to our plane and boarding for a plane, is basically once you're ready to get on board on the plane, you get one last time scan, and then you're good to go and fly the plane. In our digital lives is basically the identity verification history, the monitor login history, audit logs. So basically anything that helps us understand what happens through the life of a user session, that is accounting. And you can foresee like what are the benefits of doing that. But while I was reading, I also find out that accounting is important because it allows you to benchmark and kind of predict the future, prepare for scaling or even downgrading your networks, your API users and stuff like that. And that's pretty much it. So first step, identification. Second step, authentication. Then comes authorization. With those two together, you have the identity of the user, and then you have accounting at the end. And just to give you a couple examples, so for authentication, we have two main protocols. One of them is SAML, and the other one is social something that I just forgot the name. Oh, Open Connect ID. And then for authorization, there's on the documentation that Salesforce uses is only listed the OAuth 2.0. And sometimes I get confused between which one of them is authentication and which one of them is authorization. And I noticed that OAuth starts with an O. So the one word that has two O's on it is for authorization. So OAuth is authorization. That's the quickest way or the trick I use to tell them apart.
That's a nice trick.
Yeah.
Very cool trick. Yeah, and then it gets even trickier because OpenID, like it mixes both authorization and authentication. So then it's like, well, where does that fit into the picture?
Right.
So I'm going to throw this out to the group. Inside Salesforce, what features do we use for authentication? Just anybody throw them out there. And if people don't talk, I'm just going to start picking on people.
Username and password, for example.
What else can we use for authentication besides just username and password?
A one-time password, like one of the strong keys.
Yep, one-time password. Anything else?
Two-factor authentication.
Two-factor authentication, yep. What about SAML? Or what about like single sign-on? Is that part of authentication?
Yes.
All right. How about authorization? What are the many ways you can authorize what users can do in Salesforce?
You have roles. Profiles.
Well, and roles, because roles will tell you what you can see when you're reporting by hierarchy. Roles and profiles. What else?
Permission sets.
Permission sets.
Permission sets. Is there anything else?
Sharing rules.
Sharing rules. Oh, yeah. Okay, cool. How about accounting? What does Salesforce provide for accounting?
Audit Trail. Login history.
And what else?
Field history.
Event monitoring.
Field history, event monitoring. If anybody thinks of any others, let me know. But that's a pretty good list. All right. Thank you, Clara, very much. Satish, you're up next with examples of AAA. Some stuff that we might see on the exam. Well, hopefully not exactly what we see on the exam.
Yeah. Let me just let me know when you can see. All right. You see my screen?
Yes.
Awesome. Well, I think our objective here is, given a scenario, we should identify if it's authentication or authorization. I know Clara presented that stuff. Thanks, Clara. And we got some samples out, so this should be helpful. And so what I thought is I would just have some scenarios, and we can have an open floor to just discuss those. And I can show you some examples even on the Salesforce, one of those dev orgs. I have a ton of them, and we have maybe around 15 minutes, so we'll try to get through this. Let me read through this, right? So Universal Containers uses Salesforce as its CRM. UC recently merged with Universal Deliveries. What Salesforce feature might UC use to make it easier to provision UD users to Salesforce? The keyword here is provision. Anybody? I just want to open it up. Anybody has some thoughts we can discuss? It's really the Identity Connect. So the reason why Identity Connect can be used is because Identity Connect is a Salesforce feature that provides for provisioning of users. Anytime users need to be given access to a Salesforce org, first they need to be in a Salesforce org. For that, you can go manually create them, or you can use something like Identity Connect, which can actually automatically provision users for you. Make sense?
So is Identity Connect that standalone program that you can, or standalone application that connects Microsoft ADFS to Salesforce and maps permissions and profiles and does user provisioning, that kind of thing?
Yep, that's the thing. It's on the study plan for later this week.
Yeah.
So you'll learn all about it. But yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
That's a good question. And then it's something that actually runs in your own, on-prem on your data center. And yeah, like Natalya said, there's a ton of stuff on Trailheads, and I have some links here. You can go through it. I went through it, but I learned a few things. It can also do authentication for you. I didn't know that before. Let's move on. So the next scenario is Universal Containers has realized that users having a sales profile have incorrect phone numbers in the system. UC decided that it's best to verify this information with the users at the time of their next login. What feature can UC use to accomplish?
Bye.
That would be login flows.
Yeah, thanks, Terry. That's the right answer. And login flow is something I have never used. I definitely read through the stuff and learned something new. There's a few other things that you can do with login flows. For example, terms and conditions, something that you want brand new users to come and accept. And there are a few other examples where you would use login flows as well. So good. That's an example of a screenshot of where you could see the login flows. It's in the setup. We can go through that. I'm going to try to go through this quickly. Universal Containers has a requirement to integrate their Salesforce application with a backend API service that validates account address data on users' behalf. What two features can UC use to avoid sharing user login and password? The keyword here is don't share user login and password. How can you do this without service accounts? Any takers?
So OAuth is one.
Yeah, you have to pick two answers.
Connected app.
It connected app.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It's both connected app and OAuth. For the API, if you're using OAuth, you can make it as a connected app. If you're using, service accounts, then you don't really need connected app. You can have a user account. You just make an API call into it. And there is a ton of stuff on connected apps. I have the resource there. We were talking about this, right? So Universal Containers recently had an incident where attributes on user object were modified. What Salesforce feature should UC admin use to research this issue? This is a tricky one. I got caught up, but I had some experience with this.
Setup Audit Trail is one.
Yeah, I definitely would look at Setup Audit Trail, but then you look at the others, it's like login history could help you, but I mean, Setup Audit Trail would tell you what fields are getting modified on objects.
You both are right. I got tricked up on this because I thought, Field Audit Trail would provide you something like this, but it actually doesn't. So anything that's on the user object, it doesn't provide that. And for example, I don't know which screen you're looking here. Let me see if I can get back to the screen here. Sorry about that, guys. Chrome. Oh. I confused my PC right away. Oh, right there. So, are you guys seeing my screen right now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I'm all over the place. Let me see. I guess I have too many browser windows open up. Where am I? There you go. All right. I wanted to show you right here. So if you go to Setup Audit Trail, you can see that you can actually see changes made to the user account if there's any password change. It also shows you stuff like if you have actually changed a permission audit profile on a user. So this is a good one. Whereas Field Audit Trail is just going to show you the history of audited fields on other objects, standard and custom objects. Okay, let's go back here.
So the Field Audit Trail is basically the field history that we would see?
That's right.
Okay. And then the Setup Audit Trail is who's messing up what on the setup side of the house.
That's right. And I don't know if, okay. And there's a ton of resources over here. And in the monitoring section, I have a page down there. There are like 4 different, ways you can monitor stuff. Let's go through this. Universal Containers wants to enforce a company security policy to not allow more than 2 concurrent sessions for the same user. What feature might UC use to accomplish this? And again, this is a little tricky unless you have gone through. And I put this out there. I know some of us didn't do all of the entity stuff, but it's something that's I thought was interesting. Any takers?
I think you could do it through a login flow if you, during that flow, set up a variable into a separate object, keeping track of the user, and then make sure they don't have more than 2 active.
You're right. There's one more answer.
I thought there was a way to actually, there's like a setting on the end where you can control that.
I don't know about the setting, but I know the 2 things. The 2 things that are definitely there are login flow and transaction security policy. Transaction security policy is something that you get when you buy, Shield, Shield platform Shield protection. It's something that you can write a custom. Definitely login flow can be done, right?
You write Apex that gets applied at certain actions that take place, and it's constantly running those.
That's right. That's right. So you can actually write transaction security policies. At some point, maybe we'll go through these. Oh, there is already an example there, right? Let me actually close this gap, where it actually talks about this concurrent user session limit policy. So you can actually write that Apex class, which can actually check in, sessions, and then it can throw an error. But these are tricky things, and if you are using transaction security, definitely do your testing. I once got locked out of my whole org. Yeah, it's very tricky.
Never apply settings to the system admin profile.
It's in fact it applies to all sessions. So the security policy is pervasive. So you have to be very careful there. And let's go to 6. I have like 11 scenarios, so I'm trying my best to keep it fast. Universal Containers wants to roll out Salesforce mobile app to its employees. Usage company policies require stronger access controls of apps on mobile devices. What features might UC use to accomplish this? Any takers?
Oof. Maybe disable single sign-on?
Yeah, single, not disable, but actually using single sign-on
using single sign-on
would help you, because you're not having in place. That's definitely a good answer. Any others you think?
All of the above, because that's just a wonderful multiple choice answer.
Yeah. Yes, you can restrict the platforms to either iOS or
Android.
You can. I'm trying to see if I can go to manage connected apps and show you guys. There is Salesforce one iOS app, right? No, maybe this is not the place where I want to show you. So there's a ton of places. So there's definitely different ways, different things that I have to show. For example, restrict device platforms. You can do that by, again, using your connected apps, where you say you don't provide access to, let's say, a Windows app, but you would definitely allow a Android or an iOS one. You can also have something like versions, of which versions you might want to support, because some older versions of the apps or OSs are not quite secure. So you can do that. And connected app security attributes are others, where you have policies that you can set up to, again, restrict what sort of access can be there. For example, you can say you can't download files, or you can't share between apps. There's a lot of stuff. There's inactivity timeout. This is really the pin on the app itself. You can actually go and set up the pin here. And if you say, hey, I actually want to have a pin that is of 5, and this is above and beyond the pin that is there on the OS. The app itself would force you to have a pin. And there's some quirks here, because I went through this. It's tied to the session. The pin expires every time the session expires.
Just actually, can you go real quick back to the setup screen, please?
Sure.
Just so I remember correctly, which one of those options on the left are you? What page are you in there? Is it the Manage Connected Apps or the Connected Apps OAuth using?
Manage Connected Apps.
Okay, all right. No, that's fine.
There's a question on this one. We'll get there. We'll get it out.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure I understood where I was.
Yeah, sure, no problem. It's the Manage Connected Apps. And let's get to the next one. So that was all of the above. Universal Container staff, sales staff uses Salesforce mobile app for their field use. A staff member has reported lost mobile phone. What feature or configuration can the system admin use to revoke the access to Salesforce?
So that's back to the Manage Connected App and disconnect that user. Or the the Connected Apps OAuth usage.
That's right. That's right. You got it.
But wouldn't that disable that for everybody with a mobile phone, though?
Well, no, I'll show it to you here.
Okay.
So the way you would do this is you have these sessions, right? You can actually go. You can actually go in and actually go take a look at that. I don't know why this is opening up in a different one, and you can revoke that session for the user.
Okay.
Right?
So if you got 100 people logging in, you'll see 100 there, and each one will have their own.
Yeah, each one would have
a piece in there, so you can individually revoke.
Yeah.
Different people.
You can just say revoke right here. and it'll revoke my access. Now I'd have to authenticate again. I had an active session, but I won't have it.
Right.
If you do,
so if you click block there,
that's right.
That will disable everybody.
This is for you to force login, and especially you would do this when you want to have some sort of a policy change. You want to roll out something new. You would block everyone, and then bring them back in. So that's one. Scenario 8. Universal Containers has a reporting application external to its Service Cloud that provides deeper insights and analytics into its product lifecycle. So think of this as some application within your enterprise, right? Not in Salesforce. UC wants to integrate this reporting application without having to re-implement its user interface. The key is it doesn't want to re-implement the user interface, and allow its account reps a seamless user experience within its Sales Cloud. What 2 features might UC use to accomplish this?
A and B.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's the right answer. And that's because Salesforce provides you the Canvas SDK. If you have external applications, you can make them as connected apps. In this case, it's a UI integration, and the single sign-on really lets you, gives you that seamless user experience. It doesn't force you to log on. It's as if the user wouldn't even know that it's external to Salesforce. Good answer there. Universal Containers Management procured G Suite, right, to provide Gmail services. UC intends to make it easier to access Gmail from within Sales Cloud, and wants its sales employees to launch Gmail from App Launcher without having to log into Gmail. Which 3 features should UC use to accomplish this? One is trick one.
That's a very tricky one, yeah, because like Google, is that a social sign-on or is that a single sign-on? You definitely want the connected app, and you'd want my domain. I'm torn between A and C for the sign-on.
I would say it's A because you're using G Suite and not the public standard Google thing. But
Yeah.
more than anything.
That's the right answer. And the reason why, this was tricky, right, Natalya? You're right. And this is very tricky because you see Google and you think social. But social, you should really think social sign-on as, your Facebook account, your Twitter account, even your Google account. But this is really for customers, right, to use their social login, not really for employees to log into the enterprise Gmail Gmail service. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I like it when you guys put tricky questions out there because that's what you're going to see on the exam, where 2 things are going to look almost right. You got to figure out which one's really right.
Yeah, that one would throw you off. This is a little. I wouldn't expect this. Unless we go through this, but let me go through this. Universal Deliveries wants to let their customers use their Facebook and Google accounts to log into customer community portal. What 2 Salesforce configurations might UD use to accomplish this? Again, this gets into you knowing how social sign-on is set up and what are those 2 settings that you would use.
A and B.
That's right. That's really right. Again, this is something, once you get into the social sign-on trailhead and go through those things, how to set up the social sign-on, you will see that those are the 2 things. Auth provider is either, it's Google or it's Facebook. You have to set it up. And there's a registration handler, which actually goes and creates a user account and a contact behind the scene when you come in from there. So that's really the 2 things that you need. I think the 11th is the last one. This is a tricky one, guys. I apologize, but I'll go through this. I thought this would be useful because this covers one of the other topics around the things in identity. Universal Containers has a customer community configured with single sign-on for its customers to log in and check status of support cases they report. UC recently implemented a feature to notify its customers of case updates with an email that has a direct link to the case record. So they get an email, right, with the link to the case. However, when customers click on the link, they are directed to a standard authorization required page. It errors out instead of the single sign-on page where it can force them to log in, right? What configuration change might resolve this issue? It's a very tricky one. I wouldn't expect myself to answer this unless I read through this either.
I'd say B.
Yeah, so there is a very specific setting, and this I found this in a knowledge article. But really what I was going after in this one was I was looking for how would I present an example of a deep linking, right? A deep link, not quite on the mobile app, but on a web app, where you would get a link and your authentication will really help you go directly to that, right? So there is definitely this set authorization required page as default community login page, so that it takes you to there when you have a deep link. Otherwise, it would just error out.
Nice.
Okay, so that's all I had, and I have a few links to elements of authentication that Clara covered, and some links to security, and I added a couple of these to the resource pages, and I will add the rest. That's
Great.
it.
All right, thank you. We're a little bit over time. I'm going to zoom through the final slide set. And really the next thing is, it's coming, there it is, I hope. So again, reminder, schedule and resource links are out there. For the next session, work on OAuth, a couple of links there for you. And on Wednesday, everybody gets to talk. We're going to start with login flows. Edith is going to do the concept. Jeff is going to do a little show and tell for us. And then we're going to open it up to the entire group to talk about what does SAML mean to you, so that we can get multiple perspectives, because everybody sees things a little differently and we can all learn from each other's perspectives. So with that, thank you for attending. We'll talk to all of you on Wednesday. Be prepared to talk SAML, and have a great week, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.